Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Usman and I will be presenting ureterorhinoscopy and cystolitholopexy. First of all, ureteroscopy. Ureteroscopy is examination of upper urinary tract, usually performed with the ureteroscope that is passed through the urethra and bladder into the ureter. It is used both for diagnostic purpose as well as therapeutic purpose. For diagnostic, it is used when we have positive cytology, there is some filling defect in excretory urography, or in case of recurrent UTI and benign essential hematuria. Whereas it is used for therapeutic purpose in urolithiasis in case of TCC of upper tract, ureteropelvic junction obstruction, or to remove foreign body, migrated uterine stents, balloon catheters, or fractured instruments. Whenever we have to perform ureteroscopy in case of ureterocolic, first the patient we take detailed history and examination of the patient. After that, we perform X-ray or IVP or ultrasound to see the stone. IVP give us information of not only about the stone size but also about the spatial anatomy of the kidney and infundibulopelvic angle, which is very important to assess whether the stone can be removed by URS or not. We can use retrograde pyrography if IV contrast cannot be given, but most of the time we use CT scan for the before URS to identify the stone size and to evaluate the kidney. After that, we need to assess the patient for the anesthesia. Usually, general anesthesia is used for proximal ureteric stone. Spinal anesthesia is used for distal ureteric stone. In case of female, IV analgesia can be used for distal ureteric stone. Before procedure, we have to stop anticoagulants 7 to 10 days before the procedure. If the urine culture is positive, it should be treated according to the sensitivity. Sometimes perioperative antibiotics is used in case of UTI, parenchymal reflux, or traumatic procedure. So some surgeons prefer to use thrombosis prophylaxis with low molecular weight heparin starting the evening before the operation. This is the patient positioning. Patients are usually placed in the lithotomy position. Abduction and lowering of the contralateral leg improves the freedom of the urologist during the procedure. These are the various equipments which are used for the URS. We need cystoscope and uteroscope, guide wire dilator, uteric catheters, sheath, and the trolley on which all the equipments are placed, and energy, lithoclast, and fluoroscopes. Ureteroscope. There are 4 types: rigid, semi-rigid, flexible, and digital. Rigid ureteroscopes were used in the past. They have bigger diameter because of the large broad lens. They are not used nowadays. Then there are semi-rigid ureteroscope. They are developed on the basis of fiber optical system. The tip diameter is usually 7 FR and the working channel is 3 FR. This is the shape of the semi-rigid which we use in our operation theaters. Then flexible ureteroscopes. They are also based on fiber optic technology. They have a deflection system which enable them to move up to 120 to 170 degree. They have working channels from 3.6 FR to 4 FR and a tip size from 6.75 to 9 FR. These are the standard flexible ureteroscope which can move up to 170 degree. There are some modern semi-flexible ureteroscope which can move up to 325 degrees. Then this is the digital ureteroscope. Here there is no light source. The light source is present in the tip of the ureteroscope. Guide wires. They are used to gain access to the ureter. They are also used for straightening of the ureter, dilatation of the ureter, or making percutaneous tract. And sometimes they are used for the placement of stent placement. There are 3 kinds of guide wires that are commonly used: working wire or safety wire. Then there are lubricous wire, which are also called glide wires. They are used when the guide when we cannot move past against the obstacle like ureteric stone. Rigid guide wires are used for ureter placement of the ureter access sheath or ureter stent placement. Ureteric catheters. They are mostly from 4 FR to 6 FR with open-ended ureter catheters. They are used for exchange of wire, installation of a dye. There is torque catheters. They are used in case of dilated torsion ureter to straighten them. Now, dual lumen catheters are also available to place two guide wires at the same time. Post-procedure, sometimes they are also used for post-procedure drainage. Ureteral dilatation devices. The ureteral dilatation was carried out usually in past, but now they are not used because of the small size of the scopes. There are two types of ureteral dilatations, active dilatation and passive dilatation. In active dilatation, we use either stents of increasing caliber or balloon catheter are used. In case of passive dilatation, stenting is performed 3 to 7 days prior to the definitive surgery. The various types of ureteral dilators are metal dilators, balloon dilators, Nottingham single-step dilators, and stenting. Intracorporeal lithotripters. There are four types. Electrohydraulic lithotripsy and ultrasonic lithotripsy are not commonly used nowadays. They were used in the past, but they are not commonly used now. Now we mainly use pneumatic lithotripsy and laser lithotripsy. In pneumatic lithotripsy, electromechanical energy is used to fragment the stone. If the fragmentation by pneumatic is good, low risk of ureteral injury is present. However, there is significant risk of retropulsion of stone. Then laser lithotripsy. And laser lithotripsy is gold standard nowadays. It is safe. Flexible quartz fibers can be used with both rigid and flexible ureteroscope. It is effective for stone of any composition. The disadvantage is its cost. Laser-based treatment. There are two types of lasers that are used mostly nowadays: anti-YAG and holmium-YAG laser. The fibers which are used in case of semi-rigid are 365 micrometer fibers, while in case of flexible they are 227. Anti-YAG laser has low cost, but its efficiency is low for hard stone like calcium oxalate monohydrate and cystine stone. Holmium YAG laser is gold standard, and it can be used for stone against stone of any chemical composition. The breakdown of stone is by thermal decomposition of the stone and thermal expansion of vaporization of water. Holmium YAG laser, it has low tissue penetration of less than 0.5 mm, fewer than thermal injuries. So it causes fewer thermal injuries, less strong migration as compared to the ballistic probe. Laser probe must have contact to the stone before using it. Perforation of ureter or pelvic wall is possible. Then there are ureter occluding devices. The number one is stone cone. It is made up of nitinol and prevents the retropulsion of stone. It reduces the incidence of residual fragmentation greater than 3 mm in size. Then there is N-trap. It is mesh netting composed of nitinol fibers. It is deployed through 3FR catheter and placed proximal to the calculi, functioning as a backstop. It is also used for prevention of stone retropulsion. Then there is accordion. It is made up of two parts, nylon and stainless steel guide wire with short length of polyurethane film attached to the wire section. This is the shape of the accordion before it is deployed. After using it, it is converted into brush shape like this. It prevents the stone retropulsion in the ureter. Nowadays, urogels are also used to prevent retropulsion. They are thermosensitive polymers, solid at body temperature, liquid at cooler temperature. It is deployed proximal to the stone through a 3FR ureter catheter and temporarily occludes ureter, preventing proximal migration. After lithotripsy, polymer dissolution occurs by irrigating it with cool saline. Recent studies have shown that urogel effectively occludes the ureter during the ureteroscopic lithotripsy without damaging urothelium. Then there are stone retrieval devices. They are made up of stainless steel baskets or nitinol baskets. Stainless steel baskets are of two types. which are Segura and Helical, whereas nitinol baskets, which are mostly used nowadays, are like this. They may be with the tip or tipless. Tipless baskets causes less injury as compared to the one with the tip. Complication of ureteroscopic basketing. Sometimes it causes avulsion, interception, abrasion, perforation, postoperative stricture, and basket breakage or entrapment during the procedure.
There are different devices that can be used to avoid retroversion. So apart from these devices, what are the different procedures that can be done to avoid retroversion? Anyone? You will not have always that instruments that can be used for avoiding retroversions. Yes, Faisal.
While doing endoscopic surgery like URS, we can, as soon as we enter into the ureter through the ureteric orifice, we should slow the irrigation of water. Along with, we can raise the head of the patient a bit more than the lower half of the body. And we can also give some quantity of Lasix along with fluid while breaking stone to have effective clearance of stone.
Okay, anything else? Rashid?
Sir, we can also try xylocaine gel or the ureteric catheter to the proximal to the stone. It's also prevent stone retroversion.
Anything else? Okay. What is the effect of position?
Position is also very important. Head and should be elevated. That also prevent stone prevention. And water flow, irrigation of water, it's also important role.
Anything else? Energy source.
Energy source, laser is very important. Laser.
How it reduces the chances of retroversion?
In dusting and dusting, and there is a less chance of retroversion. While in pneumatic, there is the most chance of retroversion.
So when you are using lasers, there are less chances. So what is Moses effect? Anyone heard about? There is one of the property of holmium YAG laser, Moses Tech. This is one of the property. That's why it's most commonly used other than the other lasers. What is Moses effect? Sure.
I am unable to recall it.
Umair?
I think we should ask our colleagues over there. Ghulam Mustafa, would you like to say something about Moses effect? Jim.
Postgraduates from here, then
So anybody from your side?
Imam Shahzad and Dr. Nazish, senior resident.
Sir, just like it forms a bubble, and in that bubble formation, there is a slow pulses generated that causes the fragmentation of the stone. If I recall it, this is the technique for the effect of the Moses.
Jim, you correct this statement a little further.
Actually, when laser energy is being transmitted from the fiber towards the stone, although there are different types of laser fibers, one is contact and other is non-contact. When we start giving a pulse of the laser, initial part of the laser energy is being utilized to convert water interface into the vapor, and then vapor after that laser energy will be totally transmitted towards the stone, and this is in the pulsative manner, and produces Moses effect to cause maximum stone fragmentation due to Moses effect. So this is the newer concept of laser stone fragmentation system. That's Moses Lake, as per I understand. But Dr. Harris can correct me if he is present there.
He is not here. He is not here.
Yeah, you are correct that basically this holmium laser, this parts the water. So it makes space so that the energy source that you are using, the one pulse is more stronger than the next one. So this vaporize the stone basically. Yes, Usman just want to say something.
Sir, do we have experience of these using these ureteric occlusion devices like Dormia basket or?
Yes, we had a Dormia basket earlier, but that was earlier part of 1990s. But then it was kind of producing more complications rather than any benefit. So very early it was abandoned just because of the two reasons. One is the cost. The cost was actually very high at that time, and since we are in the process of not charging anything from our patients, so it wasn't something which became fashionable, at least in our unit in SIUT. So it was there, yes, but we couldn't find much benefit from it, just because of the reason that we have got, again at that time, 2 or 3 different technologies for a ureteric stone, and we can easily pulverize those stones through laser technology. So laser was readily available at that time. In the early part, 20th century, 21st century, then again, it was something which was not so readily available. But now again, after 20 years or so, it is something which is available. So for our unit, things come in and they go out depending upon the economic conditions. But we have got very limited experience of using Dormia basket.
Yes.
Then there are endo-irrigation system. They are used for dilating the ureter and to improve vision during the procedure. There are 2 methods for it. There are either active hand pump or pressurized irrigation, which is usually kept less than 300 mmHg. Nowadays, they have also developed Pathfinder bulb, which is used for active hand pump, and the single action pump needle. But the mostly we use is the one like a BV apparatus, which we use in our OTs, in which normal sign is usually placed. These are modernized techniques. Then the fluoroscope. In past, there were special OTs in which it was the fluoroscopic instrument was placed, but now it has replaced it has been replaced by CIAM. They are used to guide us during the ureteral access, monitoring during endoscopy, and during the stent placement. The benefits of the CIAM is great mobility, improved image for us, and less scattering of radiation during the exposure to the surgeon. Actually, the radiation are released from this part of the CIAM. So if it is placed closer to the patient, then the scattering of the radiation is very less. Then the trolley. This is the trolley in which we can see the various instruments which are arranged accordingly. Recent studies have shown that the trolley should be big and all the instruments should be arranged in proper manner. Placing instrument like this will not only increase the risk of damaging to the instrument, but also create problems during the surgery, and this will also be there will also be a risk to the patients. Then the setup. In setup, video and CIAM monitor on the one side are placed on the one side of the patient, along with the irrigation, light source, and lithotrip generator, whereas CIAM is placed on the other side. Here we can see that the CIAM is placed on the one side, and all the screens and the water source are placed on the other side.
You just go back one slide. You see, this is a job of a surgeon, because surgeon is the one who knows the cost of all these equipments. So, for instance, you can say that this is the job of somebody who is a theater technician or a theater manager. So he can arrange all these things on one trolley or maybe on 2 trolleys, so that everything is actually classified, which instrument should go to any other trolleys. But the kind of system that that should be implemented has to be captained by actually a surgeon, because theatre managers can't do anything on themselves. They need a certain kind of a guideline. They need certain kind of actually a two-way communication, perhaps, or a discussion. What kind of instrument is a very costly instrument? Yes, they know that before anything comes into the theatre. But which of these is very important, and which of these is most frequently used? For instance, if a surgeon is there and his or her eyes are towards the patient, then his back or her back is towards the trolleys. So if anything comes in to his hand, it has to be passed on by the technician. Now the technician has to know what kind of instruments are there on the right side of the table, what kind of instruments are there on the left side of the table. So there has to be a system, there has to be an order, and that order has to be somebody like a surgeon who needs a discussion with all the technicians and the theatre managers, so that everything should be in a kind of a discipline, rather than like this one, the other figure, in which everything is jumbled up one over the other. So you can't find, for instance, a camera, which is the most costliest thing in this system. So you see, what I'm actually stressing, GM over there, is you have to make yourself adjusted within the theatre environment, so that everything should be there, and you should know where everything is. It's not only the job of a technician, it's the job of us also. So we sometimes, when we just walk into the theatre, we think that everything will be done for us, but we have to take part in it. For instance, scrubbing, for instance, patient positioning, for instance, where the arm of the patient is. Because if there is anything which is like a brachial palsy, or something which actually stretches the axilla, and there are certain nerves which goes through the axilla, we know that what is the aftermath of that bad positioning. So you have to have a proactive approach towards everything, right from instrument handling, instrument position, to the patient position, and whatever. Because at the end of the day, what we want to have is something, a patient who has got less and less complications, and no complication out of something which is ill discipline, as we see in this picture. So what do you say, GM? I need your opinion.
Yes, I totally agree, and we recently had that similar experience. When we don't involve into these all settings, we feel much difficulties in that. Just like last week, we saw that the PCNL position of the supine position in our theatre was not optimized, and that's why people complained that our nephroscope is very much hindered into the side table. And when I checked, the position was improperly maintained most of the time in the theatre. I myself and Dr. Makbul involved in that making position, and then that things settled, and now we are doing comfortably. And we must know everything like instruments and materials available in theatre, so that we can manage all these things, and we can also help out the technicians and junior or seniors who are there, so that things go smoothly. And by doing this all, we will be aware that how we can safely use these all instruments. Because if we don't know, then we can break or make these instruments dysfunctional.
Right. So, for instance, if I ask this question to any of our colleagues, junior colleagues, what is the importance of white balance, and how this white balance is actually created? Because everybody is accustomed to do something called cystoscopy, and there is a camera over the cystoscope, and you see the monitor. But how come this camera is actually calibrated Not many of us can answer this question. But this is the most essential part of the whole procedure, because you are using a camera and you don't know how to calibrate it. This is not the job of a technician. This is the job of a surgeon who is using it, right? So knowing the instrument, knowing the quality of and the efficiency, how you can bring about that efficiency from the same instrument, this is again the job of a surgeon. This is not the job of anybody else, right? So what we are stressing for the past 2 or 3 lectures is one must know and take pride in it that there are certain instruments which are high-end instruments. They are very costly instruments. And urology is one field which is out of many other fields of general surgery, subspecialties of general surgery, where there is too much of technology involved. So either you are interested and excited by technology or you are not. That depends upon yourself. But the thing is, if you are a urologist and you are using endoscopy or you are taking some patient towards endoscopes, you must know how to handle endoscopes. So these are not toys. They are very sophisticated, very delicate instruments.
Definitely.
Then the technique. First of all, we perform cystoscopy. Cystoscope is introduced after applying jelly on it through the urethra. We see the normal anatomy of the urethra and identify the prostate and see the prostate in case of male. After that, both ureteric orifices are identified, and then we pass the ureteric catheter up to the respective ureter, which is to be cannulated. Then the glide wire is introduced and carried up the collecting system of the respective kidney. It is carried up to the level of the stone. Then the ureteric catheter is ascended over it. After that, the glide wire is replaced by the guide wire, because glide wire is slippery in nature and it is mostly dislodged during the instrumentation. Then the ureteroscope is ascended with the aid of the guide wire. During this, the pressure of the fluid should be managed so that the stone is not retropulsed. We have 2 methods, as I have already told. Mostly we should prefer the hand pump in this case. Then the lithoclast is introduced through the ureteroscope and the stone is fragmented. We can avoid retropulsion using the various techniques, like I have already told. Then the instruments, there are certain instruments which are used for the retrieval of the stones. Then the placement, then the question is whether we should place DJ or not. We should prefer DJ in high-risk cases. If there is ureteric injury, there is chances of ureteral edema, there is some stricture, large residual stone burden. In case of solitary kidney, the patient with the renal insufficiency and coagulopathy. In all these cases, we should prefer to place DJ. The preference of DJ is also indicated sometime if we have performed prolonged surgeries and there is chances of some complication. If we are suspecting that there is ureteral edema, then we can place catheter for 2 to 3 days. However, if there is some ureteral injury, then the DJ stent is placed for 4 to 6 weeks. Techniques and steps. If there is distal or mid-ureteric stone, semi-rigid ureteroscope is usually preferred. If the stone size is less than 4 mm, then is greater than 4 mm, then holmium laser lithotripsy is performed. If the stone size is less than 4 mm, they are removed with the basket or the grasper. In case of proximal ureteric stone, flexible ureteroscopes are used. Then there are the complications which occurs during the performance of the URS. There is chances of bleeding, there is chances of mucosal injury, some false passage, thermal injuries, ureteral perforation, submucosal or lost stone, which later cause granulation there, or ureteral avulsion, technology failure, which may be because of the damage to the flexible or semi-rigid ureteroscope. Then there are certain late complications such as renal damage, ureteral stent discomfort, which is usually treated with alpha blockers. There is chances of infection and sepsis. There are also sometimes temporary VUR after the performing URS. Then there is chance of ureteral strictures, and we may need second surgery sometimes. Postoperative care. Usually it is performed as a day care procedure. It is performed under general anesthesia, spinal anesthesia. Patient is discharged in the evening, Foley's is removed. Patient is given oral, patient after 4 to 6 hours, patient is allowed oral food and mobilized when fully awake. Catheter can be removed and the patient can be discharged. On discharge slip, we give analgesia. If we have placed the stent, then patient should be counseled in detail about the stent and its removal. Moreover, now recent studies says that postoperative antibiotics are not indicated in case of URS. Now, retrograde intrarenal surgery. This is a surgery within the renal pelvic calcium system performed using instrument introduced in retrograde fashion through the bladder and the ureter. Indication, it is used in case of failed ESWL, stone size less than 1.5 centimeter. RIRS assisted ESWL, if stone up to 2.5 centimeter. In case of radiolucent stone, when the stone size is less than 1.5 centimeter, concomitant renal and ureteral stone. And when the stone burden is less than 1 centimeter, calcareous diverticular stone and stone with nephrocalcinosis. Advantages. It has shorter hospital stay, lower cost, cosmesis, earlier return to work. Proximal ureteric stone can also be managed with it. Contraindications. If there is a urinary tract infection, if there is ureteral anomaly or stricture, or if there is some difficulty in positioning of the patient. Instruments which are used for retrograde intrarenal surgery is flexible ureterorhinoscope, guide wire dilator, ureter access sheath, intracorporeal lithotripsy, which is only laser in this case, and fluoroscopic unit. This is the flexible fiber optic uterorhinoscope which is used. This is a digital rhinoscope in which the light source is present in the tip of the uterorhinoscope. And sometimes we can also place a chip in it which can record the video at the same time. This is the tip of the digital uteroscope. Deflection of the tip. There is a lever system which is present in the tip of the flexible uteroscope. The range of movement is from 180 degree to 270 degree. Uniplanar, rotate the scope to achieve the deflection in different planes. So the flexible uteroscope move only in one plane. We rotate our hand according to the stone, according to the positioning of the stone. Direction of movement, it can be either intuitive or counterintuitive. It means.
So, Ghulam Mustafa, is there Mehtab sitting behind you?
No, sir, Dr. Jamal.
Dr. Jamal. So, Dr. Jamal, what this word means, intuitive and counterintuitive? The pause is too much. So anybody else from your side? Otherwise, I'll ask this question to my side.
Sir, the deflection of the tip towards towards one side, it's called the intuitive, and the counterintuitive towards the opposite side. Like if it's moved, the handle of the knob just which is controlling the tip of the deflection. If it's moving up in the direction and the tip of the direction moves up, it's called intuitive, and counterintuitive is opposite to that.
You see, it's just the same as in laparoscopy. Suppose the control mechanism on this URS is in under your thumb, and if you want to move it, if the lever moves up, the instrument moves up, the tip of the instrument, then it is intuitive. Counterintuitive is if your lever moves up, the tip moves down, then it is counterintuitive. The same goes in laparoscopy. When you want your laparoscope to move, an instrument to move up, you have to move your hand down. Or if you want to move it down, your hand has to move yourself up. So these are intuitive and counterintuitive.
The movement should be guided with the fluoroscopy in order to prevent any injury. Lower calyceal access. Lower calyceal access can be made by active deflection. It cannot be made alone with the active deflection. in most of the cases because of the shorter length of the deflected segment. Methods to improve access include secondary passive deflection, in which the proximal portion, the portion proximal to the deflected segment is passively deflected by pushing on the upper end of the pelvis. Actually, there is a lever in the distal end of the flexible ureteroscope, which is carry out all the movement. The active deflection is carried out at that lever. However, in case of passive deflection, we only tilt our flexible cystoscope only a little bit and then push the flexible cystoscope distal to our lever to touch the pelvis. In this way, we get secondary passive deflection. Then there are modernized instruments which have two levers in which secondary active deflection can also be carried out. The portion proximal to the deflected segment in these cases is actively deflected. Then there are certain instruments in which exaggerated deflection is carried out. The length of in this case, the length of the deflected segment increases, and all this aid in all of this helps us in reaching the lower calcium stones. Here we can see that this is the flexible ureteroscope in which there is active deflection, and these are modernized in which we can have exaggerated primary deflection. Then precaution by using the deflection mechanism. Failure of deflection mechanism is the most common cause of scope dysfunction. Scope should not be deflected while inserting laser fiber. Laser fiber scrapes the inner surface of the working channel and creates a small rent, which increases over time and eventually perforates. Do not fire laser within the working channel. The scope mechanism is damaged. There is a golden rule. Do not step on the panel if you cannot see the tip of the fiber in contact with the stone. Then the dilator. Use of access sheath is optional, and it depends on surgeonal personal preference, stone load, and pelvic cultural anatomy. The size of access sheath is 9/11 FR or 12/14 FR. Advantages of access sheath. It facilitates repeated introduction and withdrawal of the endoscope, minimizes distal ureteric trauma, wear on the ureteroscope, avoid buildup of pressure within the PCS. Disadvantage of access sheath is sometimes it requires pre-stenting 2 to 4 weeks due to less spacious ureter. Moreover, there is a chance of ureter injury in some cases.
You see, I have got a reservation about this optional use of access sheath. If you want to have a proper RIRS, if you don't want to have complications, if you don't want to have something called a leak from the fornices, and you want to increase the pressure so that you can clear off the stone, you got to have this access sheath. What access sheath does is it reduces the intrarenal pressure, and that pressure is actually created because this is a kind of a circuit which is closed at one end, and that end is the kidney end, the renal pelvis. So if you increase the pressure, the gates will open, and these are the fornix. So if you have an access sheath, it will not cause all these complications. You will not have something which we see in our unit also. In many of the cases, whenever there is URS done, if you do an ultrasound, in majority of the cases, you will find a periureteric collection. That collection is actually absorbed in due course of time. But if you don't want to have it, the thing is, what you want to have then is the access sheath. So the access sheath has got its own merit, and that I think should not be optional. It should not be a surgeon's personal choice. There is no personal preference. Everything is evidence-based. If there is an evidence of complication, even if it is in, say, 1 out of 10, you got to have this access sheath. Otherwise, you don't go towards RIRS. Size gives you advantage. It doesn't allow you to just play around.
This is the access sheath. Here we can see that there are 2 working channels in the access sheath. Then there is hydrophilic coating, which decreases the friction of the access sheath. There is the taper introducer dilator, which is present on the distal end of the tip. This is used in most of the cases of RIRS. Technique. The patient is placed in dorsal lithotomy position. Safety guide bar is inserted up to the renal pelvis. Ureteric dilatation and use of access sheath as preferred or is used. Flexible ureterorhinoscope, rear load up to the renal pelvis over double flexible tip guide wire under fluoroscopic and endoscopic guidance. Systematic inspection of the pelvic ulcer system to identify the pathology, endoscopy under saline irrigation. This is aided with the fluoroscopy. Lithotripsy with the help of Holmian laser is performed. Stone is sometimes relocated. If the stone is present in the lower calces, it is relocated into the middle calces and then fragmented. Sometimes they are retrieved with the basket if indicated. Assess stone clearance with endoscopy and fluoroscopy. Complication. Intraoperative. There is failure to access sometimes in the ureter, kidney, or stone. Stone migration into the ureter wall. Failure to fragment stone. Mucosal trauma. Ureter perforation and avulsion. Postoperatively, there is chances of hematuria, renal colic, small residual stone fragment, and blood clot. Sometimes there is chance of pyelonephritis, urinoma, ureter stricture in one of the delayed complications of the RIRS. Post-operative care is same. We should counsel the patient about the anesthesia. It should be allowed orally after 4 to 6 hours. Mobilize the patient early. Can be discharged on the same day. Counsel about the stent placement and removal. Some researchers say that we should give the date of the DJ stent removal at the same time of discharge. Then there is cystolithopexy. It is a procedure to break up the bladder stone into small pieces and remove them endoscopically. There are different terminologies which are used. For example, cystolithopunch, in which mechanical energy is used to fragment the stone. Then there is urethral cystolithoclast, in which a lithoclast is introduced to fragment the stone. Then percutaneous suprapubic cystolithotomy, in which a tract is made over the abdomen and the sheath is placed through it. And then combined endoscopic approach from both the suprapubic region and perurethral. Preoperative assessment, where the main goal of the surgery in case of vesical stone is not only to see the stone burden, but also to identify the cause of the formation of stone. We take detailed history and examination. Urinalysis and urine CS is performed. Then ultrasound and X-ray KUV is performed. Cystoscopy is performed. Rarely we use renovesical radiography like IVU, retrograde cystography, or CT scan.
How much is left?
Then we optimize the patient for the general anesthesia. There are two kinds of cystoscope, rigid cystoscope and flexible cystoscope. Fragmentation of stone is by the means of pneumatic lithotripter. Ultrasonic and ultrahydraulic is not used. Laser lithotripter are sometimes used, and cystolithopunch, which is used most commonly in Pakistan. Then the anesthesia is general anesthesia, spinal anesthesia. Sometimes we can use local anesthesia with flexible cystoscope with the laser. Patient is in lithotomy position. Cystolithoscopy is performed. We look for urethral diameter, prostatic lobes, and bladder neck. In bladder, we see number of stone, size of stone, and associated disease. Small stones are removed through lavage, lavage through the cystoscope sheath, extracted using forceps or fixation by the means of resectoscope. If there is voluminous stone burden, the 200 ml of fluid is filled. Stone is fixed with the cystoscope sheath and fragmented. Complication, malfunction of the instrument, mechanical lesion on the bladder mucosa, bladder perforation, hyponatremia because of the irrigation, intraoperative bleeding, urinary tract infection, and urethral stricture are the most common complications associated with it. Then on discharge, we again advise the patient about the follow-up plan. After the 6 hours of the general anesthesia, we allow the patient orally. We can remove the Foley's on the same day and then discharge the patient and follow in the OP.
So thank you.
Thank you, GM. Thank you.